formulate the if it is any, and I don't know, just comment on that. That will be another possibility. We also have a quite funny idea with TJ that maybe TJ can introduce, because we have a new project in the Museum of Care between me and TJ, but we would like to invite other people also to join with us. Well, I don't know how to start. Maybe Gabi, if you started to facilitate, you will choose.
What was the actually maybe just to make things clear to everyone, there was a bit of a discussion about if we should be like more structured in our power structures, like if it should be more, if Museum of Care should be like an organization with, you know, power structure, whatever it is, even if it's very, you know, democratic one, or if it should just, you know, continue doing its stuff like it is, and we'll see in the future. So yeah, there was kind of this discussion, and yeah, maybe I can ask people what they think, and I can also ask, yeah, if you want to say what Museum of Care means to you. And then at the end, I would like to make another question. Anyway, so yeah. As TJ, were you going to say anything? Sevda seemed like she had an opinion. Hello?
I can write down what people say. Is that what we're doing? Should I write those down?
Okay, you can start, Matt. What do you think about this question?
Right. Well, let me think. What Museum of Care is?
Yeah, and if you think it should be more structured or less less structured for the moment.
I think so. I'll start. I think it should be less structured. I think it should be a little bit more gut. Like I can sit back and give you an analytical one, but my first gut response is going to be community. So.
Okay, my thoughts since I was asked, and please stop me if I misunderstood the question, is that, yeah, I think that in terms of structure, there's this entity called core, and right now we have these regular meetings, and I think it got us from point A to point B pretty well, but sometimes we realize that to get to point C from point B, that we need to change our organization. We may have to destroy an organization and create new ones that are better, and we have more resources to do so. So I think that these meetings should be attended by people who have a project that can amplify all of the Museum of Care, that's the goal at least, or B, people who advise them, you know, who are advisors and can help them in that regard. And that way, you know, if I don't have anything to say, if I don't have anything, you know, if I'm not one of those people, one of those two people in a particular week, I don't have to go. And that allows new people to come in, people who would like to try their hand at amplifying Museum of Care. And they can go to one of these things that's called a core meeting and have a say in the infrastructure and, you know, how people relate to each other. And in fact, if people don't like that and people want a different structure, one that's perhaps more based on consensus or whatever they want, they can perhaps make their own core, which can be in a friendly competition with that, you know, with other cores, or they can federate into a number of cores. And each one may have their own specialty in how it amplifies people. That keeps us decentralized. That keeps us from having a number of people who dominate. Like, for example, me. I shouldn't be in that position. Other people should become, you know, should have the skills and confidence and resources to be leaders as well. And this is one, I think, way to share it. Now, it may be a dumb idea, or excuse me, a flawed idea, but something along those lines might be worth considering.
Okay, can I go?
Rob, you don't have to stack, just.
I wanted to just ask, as somebody who hasn't been participating in this core group, the really boring stuff, like has there been some consensus reached about whatever like minimal legal status, structure, insurance, lawyers, all that shit? I mean, it kind of, in the meetings I have been in, it's sort of come and gone. And I'll just out of curiosity, because in this question about like, what is the structure, I would answer both, and it's a horrible thing to answer, but I think there needs to be more and less at the same time. I really like what TJ just said. I think that sounds dynamic, agile, lively, and all of that. Are you waving your hands to get me to stop talking, Gabby? Or because
This is yay. I will adapt to this now. No more.
The other thing is that I do just I'm curious if, like, when I look at this values list, it's great. Like, it's joyous, it's spirited, and it's literary. And most of the writings we've been writing so far have been really fun, but they've been more poetic than concrete, which is fine for us maybe. But again, I'm just thinking about the outside world. I want to know what something is more. So I feel like, yeah, a little tighter of a framework, but then maybe more freedom at the same time. I'm done.
I think we should moderate. I think people should sign up, Gabi, or maybe somebody else can. Or I can do that, because I remember I know that Rob was, and then somebody else was after that. Because otherwise we start to talk at the same time. Yeah, Rob.
So we had an interesting meeting yesterday, and right at the end of it, Gabby asked the question of Claire. She said, "What would be your advice as to what we should do as a group?" And if I remember rightly, Claire's basic advice was get onto Discord. And I can see that Goya, lost her name, sorry, but Goya, she's saying more or less the same thing. I think one thing about these discussions that we have on a Friday, they're very useful, but we don't actually have a record which we can refer back to, and we can't think about what people are saying and really give it a bit of consideration. And I personally, I didn't know about Discord last week, as I think some of you may remember, and I've learned a bit about it this week, and I think it's a good thing to use.
Is anyone working at the moment on setting up Discord? Does anyone know about this?
TJ created, yeah. So we're using our Carnival server, and we started to do rooms. But am I right that we also, like, an example for me, an example of the collective project is this documentary that hopefully that we started yesterday with collective interviewing Clare, and then we continue on Saturday with the interview of Gabi from Chile about Chilean constitution. And so it will Anka propose that we just we propose everybody to take interviews and they put them on YouTube with the hashtag. And then we see kind of how we collect, who want to collect them together and make a documentary making out of this. So that's for me an example of the very useful things that the Museum of Care can do for the world and basically for ourselves to contribute to a framework of discussion. And yeah, and I think that's our aim. And if we incorporate and if we become if we choose the way how we can run foundation or whatever else, we will just be one of the other competitive body on the market. And that's not what, for example, I'm personally interested. So that was our point of disagreement, because many people actually wanted to to form the body to get a job, and also have a framework. And in the beginning, I also was advocating that, because to have stability also with friends, with people I'm working to. And if you don't have money, if you don't have a legal structure, it's very difficult to survive in this world. But everything comes with price. And so considering that, now I think it was a mistake to try to simulate the formal structures. And it's kind of only way how, like my position now, that the way how this idea of creating freedom could exist, if the people are in the museum only until they wanted to be in the museum, as in these meetings now, and when they don't, they leave, and they can come back and they can leave again. Whenever you have a formal structure, you cannot do that, definitely, and you form the structures of powers, like we against the others. So, and maybe somebody like TJ can play devil advocate and just formulate the other position, so we can start from yeah.
Is Dennis here?
What
Because basically,
Dennis is here,
well,
yes.
is Dennis here? Does he want to talk? Because the question, because we all, if we were to, so maybe think everyone here is more or less on the same page, that be an institution. We want to be an anti-institution. Does that mean that we are more to the disorganized and intuition side of things, or that we want to be more organized, kind of to, in the world, like existing? But Dennis, please. I see the debate more on this side instead of.
I don't know. Like, I think the question is how do we take decisions, right? And to facilitate decision making without just decision being made by whoever feels like making a decision, you need some sort of structure, I feel. How best to do that, I don't know. I wrote this one proposal, which is really not necessarily what I think is the best way to do it. It was just to start off some sort of discussion about this, but I think things can end up being very random if we don't have some sort of idea of how we are organized.
I think
Dennis, I was asking you and you didn't reply. Decisions about what? So if the Museum of Care is actually a place in the projects, and the projects belong to the people who wanted to do them, then what kind of decision we're talking about? Are we talking about decisions, as we had this once, you came to me and tell me that I cannot do my project that I was doing with David some times ago, because we have to decide about this project, because this project is supposed to happen on the time of the carnival a year from that. And suddenly I realized, that was my cathartic moment, that I very hard work. I was working very hard to create a structure that will oppress me and others, because the moment you bring something to the structure owns that, and it's want to make decisions about whatever you brought. And that's a normal logic of the normal museum. That's how it's work in the museum. Everybody who is involved in the museum, they are working hard to archive and nominate and manipulate stuff that is in the museum. So then that should be like, I think that's a very, very crucial question.
I was like, this is a misunderstanding. I was never saying that whatever, like the visual assembly is not yours anymore, something like that. It was just there was this idea of doing that as an opening thing for the museum, and then you changed your mind about that, and then I asked you, okay, but then what? Like if you propose this as an opening thing, can you just say, okay, now we're not going to do that as an opening thing anymore? Like I questioned that, but I'm not sure. But What
No,
kind
it's
of
very-
what
it's
kind
very
of what,
interesting.
let me
It's very
let,
Guys,
let me try to answer your question. What kind of decisions? For example, now you wrote we have to write a new mission statement. Okay, I'm okay with writing a new mission statement, but that is a decision, right? The old mission statement is not
Yeah.
good anymore. We have to write those decisions. I think who makes them? Who makes them? How are they made?
yes. There is
So this decision
Matt
was
wanted
not
to
made
talk.
by me. It wasn't made by me. It was made on the meeting last time. You haven't been there, so it wasn't my decision.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
but
that's
I
still
just want to clarify. No,
it's still a decision. I don't care if it's yours or not. It's still, these are decisions that give shape to the project we're trying to build. I think like we should never be some sort of central committee that decides what happens in the rooms. That should be by the facilitators of the rooms, the people who make the rooms, etc., etc. That should be totally decentralized. But the kind of infrastructure that we are trying to build to facilitate that process, decisions like going on Discord, that's the decision. How is that made? I don't know.
that's not a
Is-
decision.
Not a decision.
That's not a decision, because it will be a decision if we will say, okay, now everybody goes to the Discord. And actually, like when we had like yeah, we never said that. We said Discord, gather town, we're doing on YouTube. So we never doing that. We never saying like everybody who came to this meeting is now doing their rooms on Discord.
Matt wanted to talk, and
Yeah.
another thing. Yeah, Matt, please, and then.
So I think part of what decisions that have been made, how that is there in the past, but I think the kind of disorganized versus organized is not a great question, because it's really how we want to be, whatever we want to do, we want to have something that everyone understands. If a decision is made, everyone understands how that decision was made, right? So last in the meeting, I wasn't there either, the last meeting, they came up with these ideas that Nika links to, of all those great, wonderful words. That's wonderful. And making sure that everyone is clear how decisions are made, I think, is the most important part. Now, if that's made through some giant, everyone's there consensus process and it's announced a month in advance, whatever, that's one route, or if it's just like whoever happens to be at the Friday meeting, that's another route. Those are kind of the practical nature of it, but it's just it's a matter of how whatever route we go will be organized, because this is what we've all decided on how we're going. And so it's really making the decision about how to make decisions is that key that we need to go for, in my mind.
There's this thing about also, recognizing the structures that we have, and if we want to continue on this path, or if we want to change. And if we want to change, I think consensus would be that we would want things to go even more democratic than they already are. Anyway, Yash, sorry.
Oh yeah, I think like that's really like what Matt said. I think quite similar to my perspective. I mean, I think the more I think about it, I feel it's about the fact that I think currently there's a few imminent decisions that we need to make around infrastructure. So because like so far I've been considering Discord as a decision as well, like not moving to it, but actually like starting to building it out, or to build it out, or updating or like agreeing on our values and so on. And I think what I feel is happens is, I think the moment a small group starts making these decisions, there's like the question of, I think it feels like we all become conscious of that question that, okay, who gets to make these decisions and why? And like when you ask that question, I think it automatically goes to the broader question of how we organized, right? So I think like that's really, I think so like this question of organization comes from some practical needs that we need to address urgently, I think, about the website, Discord, and so forth. So I think we should bear those in mind as well as we're thinking about, like when you think about organization, what are we trying to solve like most immediately? And for me, it seems to be infrastructure.
Does Claire want to say something? Did she make a sign and I missed it? No. Sorry. Someone?
In terms of structure. Oh, is there a stack?
TJ.
I guess I'm top of the stack. So, well, my view is that if you want something done, if you want infrastructure, then maybe one should take the lead and make it happen. So you can, organize it. That's what an organizer does, so you do the work and or enlist people to do the work. And if you have access to something like what's called a core meeting, you can go ahead and tell them to give you what you need to help Museum of Care succeed. So when we look at these things that we call decisions, like, for example, that thing we filled with values or whatever it was, yeah, someone said, hey, would people like to fill it out? You don't have to, you're free. If you want to amplify this person who asks you, or even tells you, you don't have to do what,
Yeah, TJ, but the thing is, there is a core meeting, but should it be clear that there is this core meeting that you can go when you need something, or should we not have a core, or should we, change core, or should we, that's the point. Or should we just, everyone can take the lead? And because sometimes you feel like, okay, but if I take the lead, maybe it's undemocratic. Like, what if people don't want me to, and I just start being, having too much power. So there were two.
Oh man, I was interrupted. Yeah, I guess the point is, yeah. What if people start gaining power as they do more stuff? And the thing is, then there should be counterbalances against that. In something what we used to call the decision-making group, I would tell them, yes, if someone, and I use myself an example, starts becoming, starts talking too much on the mailing list, starts dominating what's called decision-making, then there are ways to deal with such a person. The positive way is to spread the confidence, skills, and resources to be leaders. So, the negative way is, well, I had a nice analogy, which I won't say here. Well, okay, it was shooting me in the head. But the normal response is to find ways to sort of, either make fun of such a person who becomes a bit too big, or, there's many ways to deal with such, or just talk with that person, say, maybe you should tone it down. But anyway, I think we should focus on positive things and save negative things for when someone goes wild. But there's many tactics to deal with this. So we don't have to have one core. We can have multiple cores. You can create a core. I can create a core that's shaped the way that you want. And maybe it's better. Maybe it's more effective. Maybe it's structured in a nicer way and people will prefer that. And I say we should encourage such things. We should encourage people to become leaders, not followers, not people dependent on some brilliant person who's got all the great ideas. They should make mistakes, but be amplified and learn and become good at what they do. And that's what I think is better than so-called, what we think of as democratic, but I think is this professional, managerial, dystopian version of democracy. Anyway, I'll shut the hell up. Yeah.
Can I just want to say, sorry, I just want to say that have 15 minutes more, because that will be 2 hours altogether. So that's be for 5 hours online.
So I'd like to do whatever the point of order or about the thing that we're talking about right now, information. So I think what people are referring to as the core meeting is perhaps this formerly known as decision maker meeting. And no, that's not what we're talking about. Okay, so I like my understanding, this separate thing that's not the core meeting. An outcome of this most recent decision-making discussion was to do this documentary project. And part of me is asking, well, is this conversation here part of, is this conversation here fodder for an addendum to that documentary of decision-making project?
The decision-making group we changed it actually to group process group, because decision-making sounds like we are making the decisions. It started as a group of people that said, well, how do we want to facilitate these? How do we want to make decisions? Let's do some research on our own. And we're in the process of doing that research. And hopefully, once we kind of get our research, we'll come back and be like, hey, everyone, we have done lots of research on how groups like this make decisions, even some research on the structure. What do y'all think if we did this as our process? And hopefully there'd be some amendments and we would present that, and then we'd have some process. We're in progress, but that's, go ahead.
No, just briefly to add to what Matt said. So that research of the decision process group, in addition to that research, is Nika's proposal to do the collective documentary project, which was kind of also what I was thinking about doing as a room where we do like a documentary with about each one of us. But Nika suggested, why don't we then turn the decision-making process into a room itself? And part of the research, we do this documentary. So they're separate.
So
Yeah.
then, given
And-
that, is
Wait.
there? Oh, please go ahead, Nika.
David, I'm sorry. It's important to say. So this is a very important distinction. So we don't need to make decisions about making the documentary. So we propose to make a documentary. Anybody who wants, join the process. People don't want, they don't. I would just point out that the people who wanted to talk more about being in a core group, proposing a parliament on, they are the people not running the projects. Look, so the people who are making reading groups, they left. It's always the same group of people who wants to talk about how to make decision, and it's a different group of people who want to make a project. And maybe it's not because people are good or bad. Maybe it's because of framework and how, like, you know, we are humans are acting. So maybe we try to do in the Museum of Care, the framework that will encourage people to actually be free, play with each other, you know, and do stuff instead of sitting for free, because we're not going to fundraise, yeah? So generally people get salaries to write down, you know, and make decisions in the corporations. Here, we want to do it for free, endlessly. So why? That's a kind of insane, you know? Just, I don't understand at all.
This is the thing. I had, okay, so for example, now we're not going to fundraise anymore. Until 2 weeks ago we were, and it was not clear that we weren't. For me it was, because I had conversations with people, but for example, maybe for other people it wasn't. Now I made this plan, which I called Plan for Restructuring, a plan for restructuring, because it's not the plan, it's just one plan. And it's on the chat. I myself don't believe in it anymore. I don't care about it. I think we should just go on, like, don't have a core group, or maybe, you know, whoever is active, it gets shoved to rooms, a mailing list, and that will be a smaller mailing list for people who want to be like really active in Museum of Care, and that's the people we can trust, and you know, to get stuff done. But yeah, it's more a question.
I think we defined what does it mean to be active in the Museum of Care. It's a very important. So when you're active in the Museum of Care, when you build something, like, you know, build a project, ideally the project that other people can participate. So that's my definition of being active. If you build the structures and the bureaucratic structures, and all the structures are bureaucratic, so then you're not active, you're destructive. Because in the beginning, we were talking about post office and the post as a system. And yesterday, when Clare was talking about Extinction Rebellion, it's very interesting that she was talking about Extinction Rebellion in the UK, but she also mentioned that it's an Extinction Rebellion international. So Extinction Rebellion in the UK has like a very urgent purpose. They are organizing actions that's threatening for the people who's taking personal risk because they want to stop climate change. Whenever they discuss organization, they're literally discussing, you know, who will go to prison, maybe, you know, things like that. So when we discussing in our Museum of Organization, we're discussing some things that either you can do that for the site, thank you, Clive, who did it, or you're discussing like, Clive, report us, did you do a design? So we don't need that in the Museum of Care. And I want to tell that, I'm sorry that I changed my mind about, and it's my mind, fundraising, because of the series of events happens. So I want to say that when we did a carnival, and most of the people here, including like, I don't know, 4 or 5, was not part of the carnival. That was a lot of people, thousands of people actually was part of that. We had an emergency month to organize everything. or a little bit like a rebellion. So, and now it's something else. Now accumulating resources, people, attention. Today we have like a spammers who came, and that's, if we put any structures on top of that, that will be oppressive structures. You know, that will be what the decision was. That's what, that would be this type of decision. And I know many years, I know, like, I invited him to Museum of Care. I'm sure he didn't mean any harm to anybody, but it just was starting to talk logic of the situation as well as me when I proposed fundraising. And if got anybody about fundraising, then it's great. So I know that you're very, very talented person. So fundraise for your project. That will be a room in the Museum of Care. And the Museum of Care basically was an artistic project from the beginning. You know, it wasn't. It don't to be a building. It's not supposed to be a village, Dennis, with like 15 buildings.
But Nika, how do you propose then that a decision like we're not going to fundraise, a decision like we're going to reach out to the media now, a decision like we're going to put out a statement, a decision like we're going to allow people to set up rooms on Discord, a decision, how do you propose that those decisions are made? How do you propose? Because they are there.
So, wait. So it's a very legitimate question. So I will start to answer from the last one. We do allow people to build room on Discord. We also cannot prohibit them from doing that, and that's great. So there is no decisions to be made. We can propose that. We invited John, describe how great is that, and everybody get excited. You know, some can help to facilitate this, you know, or something else. And that's a question of being persuasive. But to make a decision about are we all going to Discord or not, that's, you know, like imagine we're open community, everybody can come. I think we have today maybe 5 members, and many people here only here for like 2 times. How about we have another 20 people here in the next Friday, and all of them should be agree on us doing something. That's never going to happen, you know, or we will just, it's only going to happen if it will be very persuasive people who have reason to convince us. For example, as a community, we are content makers, so we're valuable. It's possible to capitalize on that energy. And probably the longer we go, the more people will come and try to capitalize on that, you know? So as a community, we should prevent that and not encourage this. We want to stay not exploited. And in order to do that, we should only, we should basically try to eliminate any decisions to make until like after the final state of the website, mailing list for information about the projects of other people doing that, and then you know, and then in empty rooms with the projects that belongs to the people. Then the people, when the people leave Museum of Care, they take the project with them. We're not owning anything, and owning anything, you know, we cannot be attacked.
But look, I think everyone agrees with this decentralized structure, that rooms shouldn't be controlled by some kind of central committee. Everyone agrees with that, but you haven't answered the question. Like the question about how do we make decision about the infrastructure we're trying to set up, which should be very basic and very minimal. I think everyone agrees with that. But how do we make decisions about that? You haven't answered that question.
I think that's something we need to work out still. Like, I think we're part of.
That's what we're trying to do, right?
I think we're going too far ahead of where we're at. We need to. We know what our current structure is. For better or worse, we have a structure. Okay. We, as someone said, we should document that so people see what it is. We need to figure out how we make a decision. If someone comes up with a brilliant, or a group comes up with a brilliant new structure, how are we going to decide that yes, we all agree with that structure or not? Like, we need to take a little bit of a step back and okay, this is where we're at. What's our next step?
Because, for example, there are people with power in in this moment, for example, I have power because for some reason I rose doing stuff, being archivist, and who says I don't want to, you know, have other people deserve to have the same power as I if they are active and if they want to. Or for example, Yash and
So that
TJ.
means we should not be organization. I think we should not be an organization, because any organization, as correct what the MR wrote here, any organization should have, and then, you know, 1, 2, 3, making the decisions and so on. And as I said, when Matt was referring to we, who, you know, we are we here, you know, and then in a month it may be another we. Museum of Care as a concept was born much earlier, and Museum of Care is open source. So any of these people who is going somewhere in the world, they can take concept of Museum of Care and build their own Museum of Care. So it will be the Museums of Care, and we will be all Museums of Care united in the world. So like, we're not talking about, like, if I'm going to do like this fighting club of TJ, for example, we're definitely not going to invite 200 people in a core group. We will be like until 7 people. Now we learn, we can make a decision and be productive, you know. And by being on this reading group or assembly, we get to know each other, and we are forming already these groups that hopefully will be effective in the future. But I don't understand there's this urge to declare some kind of non-existent we, the sovereignty of nation, class, fan of davidgraeber. What is we? How would you define that?
It's not an urge to declare some kind of sovereignty. It's an urge to clear things up a bit, because I think there were actual conflicts that arose out of total unclarity of structure. I think it led to conflicts recently. I'm not a guy who wants to make a parliament or representative of sovereignty. I'm not like that, but I don't want conflicts neither. I don't like it. Sometimes it's necessary, sometimes it's healthy, but some of them are really bullshit. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I know what Claire says.
I just think we're trying to do this thing that's like a bit of a great big experiment, and it's. I think Matt is correct that we're like not there yet. We've sort of, you know, halfway through trying to turn into the first version of anything tiny of what it might be. And in that sense, I think it'd be cool if we could sort of try and attach ourselves as well to a kind of sense of iterative working, that it's okay that we're just gonna, we found a thing, it's good enough to try to work it out, to see if like this thing that we don't even quite know what it is yet can use this platform in order to sort of become itself, and then see what happens. And I feel like that like from both sides of this argument, there are very, very valid kind of points of view and questions, and I don't think that they're completely incompatible basically at all either. So, you know, things do need to be gradually worked out, but I think also at the start of something like this, you have a bunch of people who maybe are that type of person who go, okay, I'll help, let's do some stuff. And they get together and do some things. And I don't know what we could do to make it sort of visible to people, so that someone knows how to go and poke somebody and say, hey, could I join in with that? Or could I talk to you about how that works, or understand it more? But sometimes I think we can go to this place where we have conversations that are really about power, and actually, like I'm always talking about how I think power means that you have responsibility often. And mostly people aren't interested in that. They just want to criticize like who has power to do something over somebody else. But the responsibility part of that is massive. And if you're going to be laden down with responsibility by our structure, then by that right, you would be a bit less free. I can say that as someone who's part of an organizational structure at the moment that feels like it makes me very much not free at times. So I think there's some complexity here, but basically if we can sort of sit with it and let it ferment over the next few weeks and see what emerges, then I think once it starts to become a living network of kind of projects and activity, I feel like all of this stuff, all of this worry about how it's going to work is going to ease, hopefully, once people have all got their own kind of bits of the work going on. But at the moment, there's like a few people trying to facilitate getting it to exist. And then there's a lot of people here that are like kind of, you know, got projects and want to start doing stuff. And we can't facilitate that work yet. So I think everyone could just take a couple more weeks. Hopefully we'll go through it. And as we get there, we'll work out how to make these things visible and accessible. And I think both sides could be satisfied.
Can we
Yeah,
make
I think
Claire's
I would
statement a
say-
closing statement?
Hmm?
I like what you said, Claire. I'm sorry if I'm being a dictator here, but I think that's a great statement to close on, considering that it's 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I think I would like to. I think we shouldn't try to change structure right now. I think we should just go on. And I would like to propose a meeting for rooms. And when I say meeting for rooms, I say anyone who would like to, you know, get their hands dirty and do some tasks for Museum of Care can join, please. And if you're not on the rooms mailing list, send me an email or something, or say on the big mailing list, and we can set this meeting, and there'll be tons of tasks, and we can just start getting things done there. And of course, if you're just interested in the fun part, debate, you can just lurk at the big mailing list or future Discord.
What kind of task for Museum of Care, Gabi, actually? Can I ask?
Sorry,
What kind
you
of
broke.
task? What kind of task? What is this a lot of task from Museum of Care?
For example,
it's still like, what is Museum of Care? Who are we? You know,
we are these 31 people who are here. I mean, who care about the Museum of Care.
Nika,
And,
just before we all end, can you tell us what's happening tomorrow?
tomorrow is I sent an email to the mailing list. It's this documentary project, so we will talk to Gabi, who is anthropologist and one of the participants of the Chilean, I don't know, uprising or find the constitution, and we can ask you about decision-making process that happens on a nation scale, because Chilean events were quite remarkable. So that happens at 1 o'clock tomorrow. And we hopefully record it. I don't know, we should discuss details, because I have the sound equipment that maybe I can plug in and record here better on Zoom. But everybody welcome to ask questions. Yesterday we did this first time with Clare, and it was really interesting. And Anka, you will put up the video, yeah, online for everybody to see.
Claire,
Yeah.
Claire,
Huh?
yeah. So Claire recorded it. And when you have time, Claire, just send me the recording.
You didn't?
So I don't have the recording yet. But just to add on Gabi's proposal, so I was wondering, what is the problem with people gathering, even if, for example, we don't have at the moment decisions to take, talking about a decision process, is that, you know, maybe it's just a socializing kind of room, or even if there's no, you're saying there's no we, and, you know, Gabi proposed to meet about tasks. What is that? Is that, what's, you know, it's just a way of...
The thing about
I didn't say there is no we.
Yeah.
What are you saying, Gabi?
Oh no, tasks. It's, for example, in the archive, there's this big list of, for example, spaces, and some of them are like one phrase long. And for example, one task would be to like, okay, so we have to figure out what this is about, and maybe, for example, where's this place on the map? Like, why is it on the map? And where do we gather information about it? Should we, maybe it's on the wrong place of the map or something like that. So some things like that, you know, just things that should be done, and we don't have to discuss anything, just do.
And we should start moving rooms to Discord, right? I guess at some point.
But we are apparently already on Discord.
Yeah, I think, yeah, It's a link. It's actually like today we sent the summary of discussion, and it's a link together with the link to the video of discussion that summarize. So it's always on the mailing, everything. Yeah, of course, there is no problem of people gathering. That don't understand me wrong, and it's great if the people want to come together, and it's amazing to talk about projects. So there is, yeah, I'd say, and the question, I didn't say there is no we. That's what we've been saying. I ask, who are we? So that's what I ask, because I understood we as a certain group that should come to the consensus about how items Museum of Care should be developed. And that's a different sentence. If Gabi is saying, we, like some people who wanted to join me to projects that will be in Museum of Care, I would say, my God, great, when will be that? I can join, you know? So that will be one reaction, but it actually looks the same, but it's not. I don't know if makes sense. The two different proposals, to my point of view. One is people to talk about projects. Another, people who are, we are Museum of Care, gathering in order to decide how Museum of Care will be developed.
But isn't that already happening in the in various kind of groups? So is any project not a Museum of Care project? So us talking about collective documentary, for example, it's still a we.
It's actually a conceptual problem, and I think it's extremely interesting and important. So that's what Claire was explaining yesterday. If somebody organizing the Extinction Rebellion, nobody in London will tell them, you do it like that, don't use WhatsApp, because they only use WhatsApp in Ghana, for example, yeah? So documentary is a good example. If somebody would come to us and say, now you don't use YouTube because YouTube is like an evil corporation, we will tell them, you know, you don't put your interview on YouTube, but don't tell us where we put our interview. So that's a different idea about who are we and what is the project. So Gabi wrote this plan, and this plan has a very ideological kind of stand, very strong ideological stand, I think. And so I'm strongly against that. Not against Gabi.
I'm strongly against my plan. I don't care
stand.
about my plan, really. I fuck my plan, for God's sake.
So it's you shouldn't. It's actually interesting if we work through, you know. Because that's what happened to almost every organization that's happening like that. You know, very quickly people are forming this we who happens there. And then this we have to make a decision, and then it's everything goes as business as usual. So that's why I'm trying to convince Dennis, and I don't know, I don't see his face if I convince him or not. I hope I will be able to convince him. There is a possibility of creating a space in which, after you created that, you don't need to make these decisions, you know, you don't. There is the only infrastructure that exists is an infrastructure. Like, look, think about open source. About post service. That's a very good quote from David. Yeah, open don't have the central committee of post. You know, people just sending each other letters, but they consist of many post offices. And each of them have a director, have, you know, plumb, have all the infrastructure. But the idea of sending post from...
Nika, I agree that like once the structure is there, we probably don't need to make any decisions anymore. I fully agree with that. But we're not at that point yet. And in the beginning, we had like 5 working groups, and there was a whole structure and blah, 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 and that fell apart. And then there were calls to get rid of all the working groups and get rid of core. I think if we do that, I'm a strong supporter of like the principle, the doer decide. The person who makes something is the one who decides what he makes, and own initiative, stimulate own initiative. I believe in that. But I think if we get rid of, we already got rid of part of the structure that existed. If we get rid of everything, then in the end, just 1 or 2 people will end up making decisions for everyone, because a mailing list with 300 people it's not possible to manage it in a democratic way. I don't think it is. And anyway, I also believe with what somebody else said in the chat that it's more important to make it visible and that everyone can see how it works. That's probably more important than the structure itself. I agree with that as well. But now we have neither.
But why do you by structure? Yeah, okay. Oh, it's like you're talking about structure. Like it's what can you tell me what structure Post Service has? What kind of structure? I think they have one document. The same thing as GNU license has one document, and then the structure exists in Linux in a different type of projects, different type of structures, but everybody following the same license. Is a license. It's not the post office. It's not the foundation. It's not the organization. Important decision. So you don't need to manage 300 people or 400 on a mailing list, because who wants to be managed?
I don't know how to answer to that. I do think when they set up the postal service, they came to some agreement about the use of stamps and what kind of pictures to put on stamps and stuff like that. I think there was some process that led to that, and we don't have that process right now, or maybe we do, and it's just not visible. But it's like I'm not in favor of, like, you make it sound like now that I'm like in favor of setting up a whole professional organization. No, it's not like that. I just think there should be more transparency to avoid stupid conflicts or people just making random decisions that are then valid for everyone. I don't think that's healthy. But yeah.
This kind of seems like
okay. I'm kind of.
I feel like just like one quick point. I mean, I think from my side, like I think the main reason why I don't really think there's a conflict. I think it's just a question of like people talking about the same thing in a different way. You know, there's I think what we probably can't deny is that like you know, there are concrete problems that we need to make decisions on, and inevitably like 300 people collectively won't be taking those specific actions. It will end up being small groups. So, you know, like the question to answer is like, how do we avoid those small groups becoming powerful? And I think like, I feel like Dennis has one approach to it. Nika has one, I have one. So, I mean, I feel like we all seem to be approaching the same question. So I'm not sure there's actually a real conflict, you know? I think it's a disagreement over like maybe like what structure would be, but even there, I think it's just more about, I think we pretty much agree mostly, don't we?
Yeah, and I also very much like what Claire said before, you know, it doesn't need to be clear now. But,
I suggest we just fiat and let's go eat and drink and to the toilet and everything, and whoever does things, we will salute them with love and hearts forever. And yes, no one has power, everyone has power. 2 mailing lists, that's all. Woohoo.
What I like is that I actually had like, I was going to announce an actual project, oh my God, and not meta stuff, but I think it's a bit late for that now. So.
Maybe quick announcement and then big announcements next time.
Mine? Okie dokie. Well, ironically, Nika and I'm unveiling now our project called a fight club. That could have been used actually to great effect in this situation. We had considered making this into a fight club, and people were like, nah, you know, let's have it nice and peaceful. Aha, no, there are things you cannot sweep under the rug. So Nika and I are building it right now. Now, we're all collaborators here in Museum of Care, at least ideally. And, you know, Nika and I almost never fight, but we did have a fight once, and we discovered that it unleashed a lot of honesty and imagination. And that might be useful for people when they're collaborating with each other, as they're figuring out how to collaborate with each other. You know, there are ways to do it safely, you know, not causing psychological trauma. And so we've been thinking, okay, how do we deal with this conflict? What is the role of conflict? And afterwards, she came to me with this brilliant idea And she knew that my friendship with David actually was mostly about counter-attacking his trolls. So she must have thought, this is a good person to talk with about this. And she told me how, she and her son had been looking at right-wing media and that it's way more interesting than all this leftist stuff that we see. I don't know if you've heard about this Crime Think article entitled "Your Politics Are Boring as Fuck." And it starts out with this beautiful paragraph, which is, face it, your politics are boring as fuck. You know it's true. Otherwise, why does everyone cringe when you say the word? Why has attendance at your anarcho-communist theory discussion group meetings fallen to an all-time low? Why has the oppressed proletariat not come to its senses and joined you in your fight for world liberation? So yeah, and people also look at us leftists and they see we don't really fight, that we don't really, engage our emotions. And so who wants to be with a bunch of cowards who won't fight for each other? We supposedly care. We supposedly have this word called solidarity. But when you're when you're attacked, then you find out that, people don't have your back. And that's what David found oftentimes, that, he was a so-called celebrity, but where were the people who helped him with his trolls, his many, many trolls, and suddenly all disappeared. The benefits of celebrity are overrated. So anyway, aside from my rant, so what is this fight club? Well, we'd like to have fight nights. Now we're designing it right now. We're working out the format, but I think that we'll have a main fight, a main event, and it could be, one example that we're looking at is someone from Extinction Rebellion fighting with someone who is a climate change denier, a global warming denier. That could be fun, could attract lots of people. And I think before that, we could have preliminary fights with anyone who wants to, learn the arts of discussion, debate. And people could take bets. So as I recall, as Nika explained, there was a fight between Zizek and Jordan Peterson. And during that argument, people were taking bets. So yes, we should encourage bets. I don't know if we can do it legally, but people can set it up and take that as they want. Part of that structure perhaps is offering people some practice.
So we were thinking to do it. We were thinking to do it in Gather City, yeah.
Yeah.
So
because they have this three-dimensional.
So it would be like a theatrical take on agonism, as Chantal Mouffe says. That's the idea. Like agonism for reality TV.
Yeah, on what?
Agonism, this idea of trying to bring together opposing sides that never ever happens in the arts world, at least in the Nordic countries.
I suppose. And yeah.
I don't understand. I'm not sure I understand it correctly, but maybe. No, I think it's about a different type of dialogue, and yeah. So we can just write it down because now it's too late. Maybe we can present it on the next assembly. Just have like a 10 minutes in the beginning. We work it through. Maybe give some examples, and yeah, people who we want to invite, because we're collecting a list of people who could be part of the fights now or in the future. We're also thinking to having fake fights, just to invite people to kind of attempt to be something that they don't, Yeah.
And one thing we should mention, what I think John's saying is that, yeah, debates are irrational. Like Chomsky mentioned, debates are an utterly irrational institution which should not exist in a reasonable world. True. But the rationality comes from people afterwards who talk about, who won that one, Yeah, they're talking about winning. It's sort of irrational, yes. But at least they will discuss what they think about the debate, what they think about the points. There may be commentators who look at techniques people use. And I think that's where the rationality comes in. The people who discuss and find out who won the debate, the fight, I think will hopefully show a lot of rationality and it will be very interesting.
I just want to say,
because the fight is a theater, of course.
There's this guy that I've listened to talking about doing conflict work and conflict resilience work, and he talked about having a fight room in like colleges or schools, and in potentially in like places where people live. And the way he described it was, so maybe this is interesting for your like what you do when you make the space. But he said, you know, we do things all the time that we constantly know that we're going to need to do as human beings. Like every time that you want to go to bed, you don't like set up a bedroom and then like clear it away and then remake it the next day because you know that you'll want to go to bed again the next day. So his idea was kind of like you make this room for fighting so that you like facilitate fights in a really good way where people can go and like, oh, right, I need to go into that room right now because I'm going to need like this clear space where it's only for that. And so I think that's quite like always made me feel like actually the idea of fight room is quite a good idea in that way. If you recognize it as a sort of necessary function of being a human being, it's like going for a shit, you know, you just need to go in the fight room for a bit. Well, I'm quite keen on the idea of like working out how it works, like dropping in and see how it works. I mean, if you want to set me up against a climate denier, I'll do it.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I also was thinking about Jamie. Yeah, I was several.
But do we know any
we should have several.
I just get really like overwhelmed by the bubble that we all try not to live in, but we do. Like this last space that I was running in Helsinki, when we started it, we had some rule like no hate speech because, you know, we thought, well, we, you know, don't want Nazis coming. So we just, without really thinking about it, just put, here's the rules, don't knock any walls down, don't set the place on fire, no hate speech. And some friend of mine or acquaintance was like, well, what do you mean no hate speech? I mean, what if a Christian organization held an event that was in some way anti-LGBT, would that be considered hate speech? Because it wouldn't necessarily pass the legal definition, blah, 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 blah. And then is that allowed here? And I was just like, man, that's not going to happen. Like Christian groups aren't going to come here. It's just going to be fucking art students and like the same people that come to everything. And I actually said, like, I hope that happens. I hope a Christian group books an event through our open system. Anybody can book an event and they have an anti-LGBT group and the LGBT members of this group of our organization come and have a dialogue and actually meet people. And like, it's not just conflict and it's also not just preaching to the converted, but I knew that that would never, ever, ever happen, you know, and it certainly didn't. So, okay, sorry, I'm ranting. I'm on like second gear mode because we're like well done with business now, right?
There's something that happens when we get to 3 hours of meeting, and that's when everyone starts goofing off, and it's like the best part for some reason. And then it just magically starts working. We should do this every time, but we would never admit it, not even under torture. We would say all our meetings are 1 hour long.
Yeah, no, I think it could be good. And also I want to say thank you, Anka, to remind me about this fight of voice. So that's, and then we have like a Russian artist, very famous Brenner, who also came to the Red Square and was calling Yeltsin to come and fight with him. And the very idea of fight, I think, is very beautiful because people are trying to be nice. Meanwhile, like, you know, nothing happens because they kind of hide in the conflict that exists, and that's how we get where we are. You know, when there any proposal that is not kind of smooth as an egg is just dismissed because it's not okay to be disagreed, basically. Yeah. So we will maybe next time present it more kind of with their names.
It'd be good to just start showing up just for the third hour of these calls, you know. Skip the first 2 hours and just come now.
Yeah. Tommy, do you want to end this meeting with a quick song in your... Oh no. Can't hear anything.
Sorry, didn't go through.
Oh God, no, it's
Anyway, yeah, let's be honest and open, and yeah, and next time everything will be better. Every time it gets better, right?
Goodbye, everyone. And if you want to come tomorrow at 1 o'clock, we're doing the oh yes, we're hearing you now.
Bye.
Who's gonna take me to the dance?
I'm just learning. Thanks for listening.
Great, great. Bye bye.
Right.
Right.